I'm going to teach you guys how to care for a royal python on a beginner level using beginner's talks. My name's Richard, this guy's Charlie, you're watching Northern Exotics, let's go. We're going to cover every little detail. We're going to start off with what you're going to need to actually be able to care for one of these guys. We're going to move over to the setup, how to set it up, what you need to do and why you need to do it like that. We're going to walk through the temperatures and the Thermostat Pro placements, the feeding and handling of your royal python, and we're going to finish off with the most common mistakes new people make so that you don't make those mistakes as well. Starting off now with what you're going to need. There's a few things that you need and there's a few things that can be classed as optional extras. I put that in brackets because that's what they are. You need a heat source. Now whether you go for a lamp, a infrared heat projector, a heat mat, there's loads of different heat sources out there on the market. We're going to move directly over to them slightly later when we can talk about Thermostat Pro placements as well. But you need to have a heat source over one side of the enclosure. You need some Reptile disinfectant. This is the stuff that we use. It's called Viv Clean and it lasts an awful long time. That bottle is best part of 6 months old and we've still got some left in there. You need a water bowl. That you need to be big enough for the animal to totally submerge inside that water bowl, just because when it comes around time to shedding their skin, they like to go inside here to help absorb some of that moisture to help them shed that a little bit easier, and it must be cleaned out regularly. You're going to need a hide or two depending on what you want. Now this goes over the hot side of the enclosure. This is just the one that we use. It's a standard Exoterra large hide, big opening at the front there. They love it to be really dark and quite compact. So judge your hide size over the size of the actual animal that you're providing for. And last but not least, you need to have some form of measuring the temperature inside that enclosure without relying on your thermostat. For me, I've just got one of these. You press the button and it tells you what the temperature is. It goes in Fahrenheit and centigrade. All these products will be linked in the description down below. But let's move over to the optional side of things. One, substrate. Substrate is what the reptile hobby call what you would call a hamster's bedding. It's the stuff that goes in the bottom, the stuff that they lay on, the stuff that they can burrow in, all that sort of stuff. You've got various aspen bedding. This is the Pro Rep version. You've got cocoa core, cocoa fibre. Sometimes can come in a brick where you have to rehydrate it in water for it to expand. There's loads of different ways. The whole purpose of that is to keep the humidity within inside the enclosure because the humidity is very important for a snake. A royal python, 50 to 60% humidity is absolutely perfect, which is exactly what it is here in the UK. You can start adding various bits of decor into the enclosure, whether you go for fake plants, sticks, branches, or just a piece of old... This was actually chucked into his enclosure because I saw it on a shelf and I thought, I need to get that out of the way for a few minutes. I chucked it in there and he loved it. It's a stupid piece of pipe. He's on it, he's in it, he wraps up inside it, he goes under it. He absolutely, something as simple as that really turns their mind on. So it's just an optional extra for you to think about. You can add UV light into the enclosure. You can add backgrounds into the enclosures. You can get yourself a nice pink set of feeding tongs for when it comes around time to feeding. There's loads of little optional extras that you can actually get for your royal python. Do you know what? I love the names that some people call their royal pythons. Me personally, mine's called Charlie. What name have you given to your royal python? I'd love to know. Stick it in the comments down below. Now let's go over to how to set up a royal python enclosure. Again, this is a beginner's guide to it. So this is the beginner's way of doing it. You can progress once your knowledge progresses. So a standard enclosure, we've got a heat mat as a heat source, solely because that's the most common beginner topic. We are going to go over to the other ones to give you a quick brush through over there, but this is the one we're doing now. So you've got your heat mat. It has got a plug just over here. This is the safety feature that's going to stop your animal from getting burnt. It's called an on-off thermostat. There's various different companies that do make them, but you come with the plug that goes into the wall, another outlet, inlet just there, and a thermostat probe with a dial on the front which you can adjust the temperature on. The temperature you're looking for on the basking area is anything between sort of 86 degrees Fahrenheit and 89 degrees Fahrenheit. They're the mediums that I've found work perfect for mine. I checked that using one of these, so you might have to turn the dial on the thermostat to a slightly higher setting to be able to get it onto this, especially if your thermostat probe is slightly away from the actual heat mat. This will determine what the actual temperature is on that spot so that you can adjust your thermostat correctly. This goes into the wall. Your heat mat plug goes into there, just like so, and your thermostat probe goes on top of the heat mat. Unwind the cables and hide the cables. Good cable management is wise. Once you've done that on one side of the enclosure, it needs to be on one side of the enclosure. That's called the hot side and then a cold side. Why is that? So royal pythons, they do something called thermoregulate. Do you know when you go on a holiday and you step off the plane and bang, it hits you, and then it's like, but a few hours later you're pretty okay with the temperature. Your body is adjusting your temperature to accommodate the surroundings. A royal python, or any reptile for that matter, can't do that. They have to do something called thermoregulate. That means if this is too hot for them, they have to physically move their entire body over to the cold side of the enclosure. Their bodies can't adjust their body temperature to make themselves feel a bit more comfortable. So once this is stuck down, this is the Reptile Systems heat mat with a sticky back, so that will stick to the floor of the enclosure. The thermostat probe will go on top. I don't like using tape to tape it down. I just leave it on top like that. Then I'll put the substrate down, whether I'm using cocoa fibre or aspirin bedding, I'll put that straight on the top of this. But then I'll get my hide and I will physically jam that thermostat probe on it with the hide. Now, you need one hide permanently. It's called the hot hide. If you want to put one over the cold side, that's great, that's perfect. That's giving your animal more options, which is absolutely idealistic. You want your water bowl, this is an important topic, over the cold side of the enclosure. Why is that? Water evaporates when it gets too hot. If it evaporates too much, causes too much humidity within the air inside the enclosure, you're going to start giving your animal respiratory problems, whether it be respiratory infections and stuff like that. Now, if your animal's humidity isn't high enough, it needs to be 50 to 60% humidity. You can buy little round hygrometers to go in the enclosure. They're about £3. I'll link them in the description down below. If your humidity in the enclosure is slightly too low, you can just move your water bowl slightly closer to the hot side and it'll evaporate that little bit quicker, providing that little bit more humidity in the enclosure. If you've got too much humidity, move it out. If there's still too much humidity and you've moved that as far over as it can go, you're going to need to add some more ventilation inside your enclosure. If you are getting any value out of this and you are learning anything, I'd really appreciate it if you did hit that thumbs up button. And if you are new around here, please consider subscribing. We're trying to get to a goal, and with your help, that'll be possible. We also do a fair few naturalistic bioactive setups on this channel, with Charlie's big enclosure being the next one. So if you want to see that, please subscribe. If you're using an infrared heat projector, which is sort of like the top of the range, the top market sort of thing to use for a royal python, that's like a heat lamp that gives off no light, because these animals are a nocturnal, crepuscular sort of species. Dawn and dusk and through the night, they're the most active. If you've got that in a ceramic holder at the top, you want to put your thermostat probe just off to the side, away from the actual bottom. If you have your thermostat probe directly underneath, it's only going to heat the thermostat probe up quicker, and it's not going to give you a heat gradient throughout the enclosure, so your animal won't be able to thermoregulate properly. I turn it all on, and then I adjust the temperature on the thermostat to get the correct temperature underneath the basking spot. That's exactly the same if you are using a dome with a standard light too. Feeding and handling the royal python. Now, I would have him out to physically handle him and show you how to do it. However, I've got rodents on the table and I don't want him to mistake my hand for rodents. That is a top tip when it comes to handling. Don't make sure you don't touch the rodents and then go in and touch the animals. These animals find their food via heat pits in the front of their face. You'll see loads of little holes. They're the heat pits. They'll pick up the heat of the rodent in the wild. They'll be able to key in onto it and bang, they can get it that way. So just keep that in mind, referring to your body temperature inside that enclosure. Do not handle your animal 24 hours before feeding and 24 hours after feeding. What size food do you give to your animal? You want to get your rat, whatever rat it is, and measure it to the side of the animal. So don't physically put that up to the side of the animal, go, oh yeah, this is the right size for him. No, measure the animal or put your hand around him or something like that, and then just get that and say, yeah, that's a good size for them. Anything too big can cause ingestion issues, could cause regurgitation. Regurgitation's bad because the claws and stuff coming back up could really injure your animal. And you don't need to worry about going too small on the food aspect of it. Just don't try and feed 3 or 4 small ones to compensate for one big one, if you get what I mean. Try and stick to the correct size rodent. Now, everybody says, how often do you do it? Everyone says once a week, once every 7 days, keep it in a routine. Me personally, I don't do that. Now, once every 7 days is great for a beginner's knowledge. So once every 7 days you can do it. However, I like to watch the animal's behaviour. So you'll see the snake he'll digest his food for a few days, a day, maybe 2, it'll be in his hide. Then at night you'll come out and he'll be slowly going around. When you start seeing that snake coming out and he's more assertive, more hunting, so to speak, that's when I will offer a food the day after. And that tends to be the work for me. I have never had my royal python miss a meal, and that's why. You can get yourself some cool pink tongs, some big long tongs, hang it by the tail, and you can do it like that if you want your animal to strike at the actual rodent itself. Me personally, I don't do that. I will get the animal, I will thaw it out properly. So I will just leave it on a table for 18 hours or so. Just let it thaw out properly. If you dunk it in water, you're going to get water on the rodent. You can heat it up with a hairdryer, and you just end up having to do a lot more stuff to be able to get that rodent dry to go into the enclosure. I just leave it on the floor of the enclosure, on the cold side of the enclosure, so the heat doesn't affect it, and I will let the animal physically come up and get it himself. To me, that takes the strike reaction out of feeding these animals, and I don't want the strike action to be in their mentality, especially when I've got a child running around. Now, chances are some of you guys watching this video have just got your first royal python or ball python. What do you call it? Ball python or royal python? Oh, all across the world it's called all different names. I'd love to hear what you guys call it. In England, we call it royal python. That's because their Latin name is Python regius, meaning belonging to the king. That's why we call them royal pythons. What do you call them? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, royal pythons are extremely picky. Now, they are known for not feeding or going off their food or not feeding that week. How do you accommodate that? Me personally, I think that's because they're getting overfed or the environment's not 100% correct. So check your temperatures, check your humidity, check all those sorts of details, and then if all them are correct, chances are he's just either not hungry, it's coming up to breeding season, or there is an issue with the actual animal. If he doesn't feed, throw that rodent away and then try again the next week. Don't try again the next day, because he's going to be stressed out from you messing around in his enclosure and stuff. Don't handle the animal. Just give him another week and then try him. If he still doesn't feed on that next week, get your animal out, weigh him. And then, again, go a few days later, try and offer another meal again. Keep an eye on that weight every single week that he doesn't feed. And if he's losing weight, get him to the vets. If he's not losing weight, his metabolism has slowed down, it's not a massive problem. Never feed live rodents to your royal pythons, solely because it's illegal here in the UK. And if you have been handling rodents and you go in to feed your animal, chances are you're gonna take a bite. So just be careful. What does a bite actually feel like? It just feels like that's it. The bite doesn't actually physically hurt. It can draw a bit of blood. It can feel like a bit of a needle or stuff like that. It's more the thud of it actually hitting you that's the shock value behind it. So it doesn't really hurt. If you have got an animal that's bitten you with a feeding response and he's latched on and he's coiling round, do you know the hand sanitizer? Just drop a little piece of that near his mouth. Within seconds, he will instantly let it go. Same with mouthwash and toothpaste. You can just drop a little piece by there, poof, it'll let go. It's because it irritates his nasal cavities. If you do anything like that, just expect him not to feed the next week. If you have learnt anything with this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you are new around it, I'd love it if you subscribed. Bye.